not sure it's like if I would call it collaboration, it's like in the first place. I think it's like the idea was that it's like the film was supposed to be made without like his sort of participation. Um, at the very beginning, it's like the idea was not that not to make a film, sort of Werner Herzog films. Like the opening quote was some sort of starting point, but it was representing to some extent like our relation to technology, and it was representing some sort of our feeling of superiority to technology that leads to technophobia.
Okay.
And that was, let's say, the starting point, and this is where it started. And it was just later on that's like that we thought that's like, oh, of course, like his voice also, and it's like his vocabulary, it's like his styles, like would be probably like the best to extend tool to for this project or to communicate this project. And I think like
Okay.
it was then 2018, and we've reached out to him and like we told him about like our plans and the opening film, the memo, that starts the film. Mm, that was the first
Okay.
sort of contact that we got. So this is when yeah, he gave us his blessing to work on a project. Um, But of course, like the technology developed a lot along the way. Like since 2018, throughout like our production, a lot of things changed, and the project took different shape. And we've been like in contact regularly, like, and we've been discussing it. And I remember it's like there was just always like a mixed feeling, like because he would always tell me not to do this project and that it's wrong. But then on the other hand, he told me how to do it, and he gave me all the tips and it's like how, it's like sort of compact film schools, like where he would tell me it's like how important the casting will be um, and a lot of sort of support. And he was very generous when it comes to um, giving to support to me as a filmmaker. Yeah, and I think it's like then, but of course, like let's say it's like the moral and ethical issues were from the start there. It's like even though it's like the AI wasn't that widespread, and it's like it was not the same format, and I think it's like we've been by this time experimenting, but of course, like we've been discussing the moral and ethical issues from the start because the film is to some extent um, the discussion around the moral and ethical issues. So it's like it's about forgery, it's like about fakery, about hijacking somebody's persona, and it's like what does it mean? And more the technology that develops, like the more relevant those questions were, because to some extent the technology just got better, and it's like the technology was available to everybody, and it's like we've been to some extent it's like the film is the commentaries like on misinformation and disinformation from photographies, like how photography could have been manipulated, how montage is also a perfect tool that you can turn somebody that you interview to say completely something different. So I think like those reflections were always there. It's like, and I think like the idea was that the film will trigger also discussion. I think like the idea was that the film is some sort of essay, and that it's I don't think like most of those questions have definite answers. I think like the whole film was some sort of reflection, and I guess the idea was more like to push the audience into critical thinking about the current conditions and the current state we are in. So it was really so I think like the idea was that throughout the process we asked ourselves the so many questions. We wanted like the same from the audience, that they will ask themselves the same questions and reflect back like on not only AI technology and what it does, but it's like also it's like to some extent history of cinema. I think that we like quite early on we established a set of rules because we knew that like to some extent like it's going to be a collaboration or but from the start I like the idea that like that this whole universe doesn't come from me. It's like that it came from the machine from Caspar. So it's like that there is a universe, there is this town that doesn't exist in this world, like in the map of the world, that there is a um, that those characters doesn't exist, and so it was some sort of investigation. Like, and I think the idea was to sort of stay true, even when it was naive, or even it's like when it was, when the script was not great. But I
Mhm.
mean, it's like the script, at the stage when we started, it's like the format of how the the script develops, like it was, we couldn't ask it to write a script or
Mhm.
scenes. It was just a waterfall or flow of words or flux of words and then sentences and scenes and universe. So we've been editing it along the way, it's like in order to sort of preserve like this kind of, well, the poetry of the outcome of this sort of chaotic writing. Um, but also we needed to turn it into a format of the script, so it had to be some sort of digestible story. And I think it's like the what we liked about it. So basically, it's an adaptation of a script. It's like of the script that came out. But what was fascinating was that like that it was to some extent self-reflective, that it was a man and a machine, and so so that gave us the space to also ask the questions and embed the interviews that we've been making, that we've been asking again the same questions to sort of enrich the discussion. I think like when we premiered the films, like the first question that I got was that like if any of the pictures are real. And this is when I was surprised, because even though it's like the whole production design and like the ways like we designed the scenes and photography, we wanted to have something that is eerily artificial, but that was to some extent a mode of expression. But then it's like I just realized that when it premiered, like of course there are those tools now, it's like that can make incredibly realistic images, and like then I reflected that like that it sort of um, that the film started building its own layer again, or it's like it's extended its life by just the technology that has been developed. But when it comes to reflections, I think it's like from the start, I think it's like I'm not particularly um, fascinated by technology, or it's like or technology is not just like the point of my fascination, but our relation to technology. And I think it's like the film is more like about our relation to technology than technology itself. But then again, I think the um from the start, it's like I was thinking like of course like we will have to be skeptical about the technology, but like
Mhm.
I think we should be as much like skeptical about people.
Of
And I
course,
think right now, it's like at the point that we are in, I definitely think that we should be way more skeptical about people that stand behind this technology, because it's definitely more scary. It's like where the power lies, and it's like
totally.
who holds so much power. Because I think it's like this is quite absurd, and it's like how the same technologies used in warfare and like in war zones. I think it's like this is what I'm incredibly skeptical of. I think it's like there was a lot like I mean I think it's like the reaction of the audience like is probably just, like the most important. Like I mean, it's like I was always thinking it's like that I'm always asked to make the introduction to the film, and I'm not sure it's like always like how to do the introduction. I it's much easier to talk after the films, like when because film has its introduction, and
Totally.
it was supposed to make you lost there. And I was thinking it recently, like, and it's just quite cheesy or quite funny because on my way to Korea now, was like I watched The Tenant, the Christopher Nolan film. And then there is this scene where it's like the agent or whoever he is, he walks into this laboratory, and um, the scientist, she tells him, don't try to understand it, you just feel it. And then I
Yes.
thought, it's like, oh, that's also like probably like a good way to introduce the films. Like, don't understand it, just feel it.